Hi, in today's conversation on the MarTech Memo, we discuss the evolving landscape of podcast advertising, AI integration, and future trends in podcast media buying. I hope you enjoy it. Let's jump in. Hi, and welcome to the MarTech Memo, where we go beyond the surface level discussions and marketing hype. Today, I'm joined by Bart Roselli, who is the EVP of Media at Oxford Road. Oxford Road is the leading performance audio and influencer advertising agency who also purchases the largest amount of podcast inventory in the world. Hey, Bart, welcome to the show.
Hey, Marty, how you doing? Thanks for the nice intro.
Bart, could you do me a quick favor? Do you mind doing a quick intro about your role at Oxford Road and a little bit about the day-to-day there?
Sure. EVP of Media, leading the media division, and that's across radio, satellite, podcast, YouTube, social, and emerging channels. We have channel level buyers who specialize in each of these channels to bring forth that expertise. And it's something that we've been really passionate and exciting about, dating back to the days when people were like, I don't know if podcast is going to work. And we're like, oh, it's going to work. Watch this. And then just seeing the huge excitement around not just audio, but what influencer means. Because if you asked 10 people, you're going to get probably 10 different answers. But for us, if it's audio and there's someone creating influence on that, whether it's audio, video, whatever platform distribution they're using, we want access to it. We want to be able to monetize the 360 sphere of influence that creator talent brings, because that's when you really see the magic happen.
You know, as EVP in media, where are you today, feeling the most friction? Is it measurement and attribution, creator host bandwidth, agency ops, client sophistication? Where right now as it exists is that big friction point for you guys?
You could probably say it's any one of those, depending on
any one of them and all of them.
Week or month. I mean, look, the reality is with consumption habits continuing to evolve, especially with video. Video consumption is up massively. We saw this trend years ago, but now that pixel-based attribution has really evolved, it's become more of the standard, not the exception. So when you don't have the true visibility and understanding and buy-in from video yet, it's getting there. And the partners are really on top of it, because that's definitely part of validating the future. There's also how brands interact and understand how they allocate budgets and how channels work seamlessly together. Everything we always do, like dating back to 20 years ago, et cetera, is nothing is black and white. So It's how do you work with your partners and your clients to understand how are they looking at the data? What does that make sense from? Then you have, direct and indirect attribution, and how do you triangulate everything into driving something that you're like, hey, we're aligned on this. These are the actual insights. Let's go monetize the portfolio that way. And I think just the sheer evolution of influencer is forcing the hand of brands to think a little bit differently, which is very good. If you're an audio and influencer and someone says like, oh yeah, I'm an audio and I buy just radio, we're like, that's not just buying audio. And if you're saying, oh yeah, I do podcasts, and you're like, okay, well, if you're not in like several of these channels simultaneously at once, it's like dipping your toe in the ocean. Brands are just continuing to get smarter and smarter about this. There's plenty of research out in the marketplace, and we just do our best job is advocating and navigating the ecosystem. And that's going to vary depending upon the consumer profile targets they're looking at and what they're looking at in terms of a KPI. I think you could ask that question 3 years from now. We might be saying some of the same stuff, but definitely commercializing the ecosystem is something that I spend a lot of my time on. I came from radio, TV, and print, and direct mail, and it was like that's it. And you started getting podcasts, and then you're like, all right, well, how do you standardize podcasts? And IAB had to get involved and figure out what that measurement thing is. And then same thing with influencers. You got tier ones who are represented by the big talent agencies, and you got others who are just non-exclusive. Commercializing that is not an easy thing to do, and it's something that I knew was going to take many years. But same thing with podcasts is. Rome wasn't built in a day, and this is definitely not, but there's billions of dollars that go here, and it's just helping clients feel the most comfortable with how they approach it. And also, when's the right time to do it? If you're not ready, then let's not launch into it.
Right.
Expectations, because the power is there once you kind of have it ready set up from the infrastructure perspective.
Your comment before about a 360 approach, today that is more critical than ever. Talk a little bit more about your view on that, because when people think about podcast advertising, let's just call it that, they're not thinking about it from a creator or influencer standpoint and what other channels they're involved in.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to make sure you're leveraging that properly as opposed to just being a single, source of participation from a brand perspective.
Yeah, I mean, you could look at it from probably even 5 years ago, you'd have 80, 90% audio distribution of, let's say they drove 100,000, now 90% would be there. And you're like, okay, but like, all right, 10% is video. And you're like, whatever. But now you have varying levels where video is a higher percentage and concentration of that. How do you monetize that part of the business? Because you have the visual element, which is powerful. So how do you do, product placement and different things, from tracking attribution that way. And then you also have the ability to kind of look at, now you have shows that are all over the place. You got Netflix getting involved in their battle with, YouTube from that perspective. But then it's like, okay, well, when it lives on another distribution platform, what insights do you have access to? What do you not have access to? Because then you're buying more black box. And we want to go wherever the audience is, but we also have to understand how each ecosystem works. So just because it's on Netflix doesn't mean I'm going to pay a fatter premium for it, especially if I don't have access to data. So you buy tens of thousands of these, shows. It's not a one size fits all, but you have to understand, where is it? Is it 60% audio, 30% video? Like, which talent have really strong social followings and are really using that to push it forward? You could look at that from like radio, when you have, a show handle is very different than a personal handle, and the engagement metrics that align from that. So really it's a chemistry set from our perspective, and being able to figure out, okay, this person, they might be slightly more valuable on the social piece. So make sure when you're purchasing, it's not just like, let's buy the podcast. So I think the excitement is that it is diverse, and the struggle is also that it is diverse. And, each of these talent, they're like little IPOs from my perspective, is trying to understand who's on the ascent, who's hit their monetization piece.
Sure.
It doesn't mean it's not valuable anymore. It just means you have to approach it with a different lens. And I think that's the exciting piece, but it's also why it's so important that you have to have data-driven strategies, or you're going to spend a lot of money and miss pretty quickly.
Yeah. You've got such a great background. I mean, you moved from Veritone One to Oxford Road, and, both leaders in performance audio. What edge is Oxford Road trying to build with Woven in podcast plus media?
When podcasts started taking off, like there wasn't like a strata that there is for radio buying. Like there's not a standard. So we've constantly evolved to a customization piece. And with Woven, this is going to make really, really, really smart people dangerous by taking data from our Orbit tool and our performance data, which is like the Oxford Road benchmark intelligence tool. It's like, we have billions of dollars of data. We have this information. We know which clients are performing, especially in performance audio. We can say which of those creators are the right time to purchase at what point. Which ones do you need to like pause and take another clarifying reset, or do you need to approach a little bit more aggressively from from a purchase standpoint? So Woven is going to be something that is unmatched, applying the performance data, merging it into an ecosystem that is conducive for buyers, for management, compliance, and for execution. Like it's 17 tools in one that is going to be the future, and is going to only take our current levels of ability to execute effectively in a quicker manner, and make very smart people, give them all the data at their fingertips to make things quickly, decisions on the fly, versus a subjective of, I've bought this show for, so long. And we've been way past that for maybe a decade at this point from our side. But looking towards the future is, how are you going to manage tens of thousands of varying level stocks that are always finally shifting around? And then you need a tool that executes based on how the platform and the ecosystems evolve. And because we're moving and continuing to go towards 360 distribution, whether from consumption habits, et cetera, is we can then tie them all together and do that efficiently and effectively. No one has that unless you want to buy 5 or 6 systems or create and build your own ones. But then you parlay that with the performance. It almost makes me sad to be that I miss that part being a buyer growing up. Is like I didn't have any of those, things. And I used to have to make 10 phone calls to put a media plan together, and now you have hundreds and hundreds of different people you work with, but you also have the ability to make decisions based on near infinitesimal number of options and do it
That's
in an
awesome.
effective manner to tell clients like, hey, every time we spend $1, we're going to be the most effective with it from even a test and ramp perspective.
Along those lines, how are you guys thinking about AI in planning and optimizing podcast creator media? Imagine within Woven, there's a lot of AI implemented within that, but where do you still need that human judgment, which is always necessary?
I mean, look, we all know AI is going nowhere, but further and more comprehensive. I think we said this when we were chatting briefly, is I refer to the Spider-Man references. With great power comes great responsibility. Yeah. And look, anybody can say like there's tons of value in what AI can bring, but it's also, as our head of analytics says, it's garbage in, garbage out. So it's only going to tell you what you say it to do. So if you don't have the right prompts and things set up in order to do that, it can tell you something completely different.
Completely inaccurate.
So there is never, in my opinion, ever going to be the ability to not have, humans involved from an oversight perspective, because you can look at data and you could argue either side of it. What it's going to do is give you the ability to review data and make decisions exponentially faster, to play through different scenarios in terms of, let's look at a plan that factors in this. So then you have the human overseeing the element of AI. So I think it's something we're going to continue infusing and we're a huge part of in the future, but like we're also doing it from an ethicality perspective. And as a buyer myself, we operate on the assumption of not just clicking buttons.
It's not a set it and forget it. You've got to monitor it to find out if something's broken. You're going to have to go in and change the knowledge base or change some dynamic of what's driving that incorrect output.
I think what's exciting for me is like, given the breadth and size of our database being billions and billions of dollars from that perspective, plus all of the buying team boots on the ground doing this daily and watching the ebbs and flows and growth perspective, AI gets better with more data. We are going to accelerate that to insane levels of constant evolutionary learning. It's obviously on us to make sure that we're improving the enhancement of that product, but we have all the pieces and the quantitative stats that we can push through it to continue to make not only the buyers more dangerous in terms of how they look at media and which ones they recommend, but we're going to be able to leapfrog just growth just based on how fast AI evolves. And it's kind of scary to think where to be that perspective, but I was like, you give people time to think, that's dangerous in a very, very good manner.
As you look at scale, in podcasts, is it just spend in shows or the quality of the creators, the lifetime value, the brand impact? I mean, it kind of gets back to that 360 view. Like, what does scale look like as a brand is looking to market or advertise within the space?
Yeah, I guess from a brand perspective, Marty, it depends where they are in their cycle of their business. Brands that have been around for 0 to 2 years is a very different approach than somebody who's been in it for 10 years plus, because they're looking at tons of data to look at it. They know their customer profiles. They know their LTVs. They know all of their acronyms galore across the board. In the beginning, when you're a younger brand, whatever, in your seed round A through C or something like that, it's like you're proving what you're trying to do, and it has to be with very tight-knit statistical numbers. So from a brand's perspective, it depends where they are in their business cycle from early on to full scale perspective. What KPIs are you looking at? Are you looking at brand impact? And that's such a vague general statement of what the heck that means. That could mean 25 different things. And, for a lot of brands, it's like, some people will be like, I want to be on Joe Rogan, or I want to be on this one. And you're like, what are your goals? And then they will relay them. You're like, well, that's not going to be, you're not there yet. And there's certain things. So it's our job to make sure, like, you hear about the top 100, 200, all these shows, whatever, that are on the PodTrack rankers and things of that nature. But like, when's the right time to get in a show is invaluable to determine for a brand, because you can get a false negative. You can get sometimes even a false positive from that side. But I mean, when you're buying thousands of shows on a monthly basis, from our perspective, what we are taking pride in is being able to just get more efficient with the dollars spent. So you spend XYZ dollars, what percentages are we hitting? Are we getting smarter every single subsequent quarter? That's what clients want to see is, hey, I give you more money. You're going to spend it in an even more stricter fiduciary manner. And you can even start to forecast and predict is not the right word, but you can help navigate to avoid landmines. And then when's the right time to be a little bit more aggressive? When's the right time to have to pull back? I mean, last year you had tariffs and all kinds of things playing, an X factor. So I think navigating that from where they are in their cycle, what their goals are, is invaluable. It's step one. We don't want to spend a single dollar until we're perfectly aligned with how the measurement is, what their goals are. You can only be an extension of their team if you fully understand how they're approaching the business too.
Along those lines, from a D2C brand's perspective that are leaning heavily in the podcast and YouTube hosts, what mistakes are you seeing in how they brief, test, or scale creator-driven performance?
I would say it's like mistakes. I think it's like education in certain pieces because, you have brands want to get products and things out into the hands of the influencers so they can actually do their job, which is influence. At scale, you're going to be in all sizes of shows. You're going to be in shows of much smaller size and higher. And then you have to understand there's a bandwidth element from not just like an execution perspective, but on their side, they have customer service teams and they have product teams and stuff like that. So I think it's navigating together to be like, okay, like you're going to go from this level of spend to this level of spend. I think brands are very effective when you over communicate with them. You'd be like, all right, we're going to go into this. It's like, oh, well, I don't want to maybe go after that, $500 show, whatever, because it's so much work on our side. And then you're like, what also have to remember is when you find the ones that are in growth mode, like I still reference and use to the days. Like I remember when nobody knew who Joe Rogan was. Like
really,
they knew who they was. Now that's like just top of mind, whatever.
Right.
You wouldn't have known that had you not invested in the show. So like riding them on that ascent path is also important. So you have to find the balance of client bandwidth in terms of just like maybe macro execution, but it's our job to educate and make sure like, okay, is your ultimate goal performance? Is it brand safety? And then
right.
What does brand safety mean? Because brands have PR teams. They have to sometimes
approve. Right.
The world is evolving so quickly and there's so many things out there from a topics perspective that someone might say, oh, that's totally fine. And someone might be like, that's too sensitive. So having more tools that can help guide this and then you can manage that expectation allows people to feel even more comfortable investing into a massively growing ecosystem that is also now across different platform distribution. So it's an increased responsibility that you have to own from that side. Otherwise, like, it's going to be really hard to be effective, efficient, and be proactive from like a strategy forward-looking perspective.
Looking in the next 2 to 3 years, what are the top 2 things you see changing on your side of the business?
Something we've already seen and we kind of like we're forecasting is just 360, the increased distribution. Hopeful piece is the enhanced evolution of video attribution, which will help validate performance output for the growing consumption going towards video. But I think it's really the enhanced commercialization from top tier, large size networks down to the lower middle sized ones where you can be effective in your business. And then I think it's the interaction of high level celebrity and influencer perspectives, them wanting to get involved in the space, and the navigation between their representation, podcast networks, and then taking both worlds and continuing to seamlessly blend them together. That is a positive output in terms of revenue generation for talent representation piece, but also from the networks. And then same thing from our side and the rest of the industry is just because you paid a lot to acquire it doesn't mean we're going to pay to help offset your cost of goods. That's not how business is done on an agency side. And anybody from any company would say that. So I think that's the responsibility we take seriously is like, how do we continue to educate going forward so there's never the unrealistic expectation of something. And the more we can do that, the more everybody wins and the expectation is going to be set. So I think that is where it's going to go. It's like, it's hard to even predict, but knowing we're in multi billions of dollars,
Mhm.
It's just going to continue going in that direction. Consumption is going to continue being fragmented, and how myself or you and people of our age, whatever, not dating ourselves, like we grew up very differently consuming
Yeah,
media.
no, absolutely.
I wouldn't have been on Twitch, watching people
Right.
play video games. Like that's crazy to me, whatever. But it does not matter. You go where the audience is and where the numbers and the performance are. So we're agnostic by channel, but we are very conscientious of what the data is we have access to, what we can glean from that, and being able to navigate clients with confidence. And I think woven the industry and just increased in productivity, whether it's through AI, et cetera, everything's going to get smarter and better. And I think it's going to increase accountability across all people of the business because we all are in it. I say we all have stock in each other's companies because we helped build it together.
Yeah.
And now we're just at a different phase. We're not in seed round A trying to prove something to people who say, oh, I don't think this is going to be what it is. We're in like, no,
It's proven.
Here's
now
your
it's now how do you leverage it?
And what are you trying to do to take it to an infinitesimally larger level? So.
And it's become such a multi-fragmented media landscape, to try and capture consumers' attentions these days. It's so hard.
What's the what do you see, Marty, on your side? Like when you think about it from your perspective, like what is probably the most exciting piece from your side?
We're in go-to-market AI revenue strategies, right? And accelerating revenue. And I think for me, there's just so many tools out there. And I think we're right now at a stage where people are testing, there's still enterprises are looking and testing in AI. They may have a corporate policy, but their individual employees are using it, probably not how they should be. Mm-hmm. And so I think from an enterprise standpoint and from a go-to-market standpoint, I think it just is accelerating the ability to drive revenue that much faster. And I think that not enough, companies right now are recognizing that. And so it's adopting all that. But then where we come in is orchestrating all that. We're sort of the brain, the cortex of it, because now there's so many tools. How do you make sure that everything is talking together? And that's what we're building towards. How do you best deploy it in a way that, is meaningful?
I use the joke reference sometimes in terms of like, oh, how do you argue data? I'm like, well, I can say going from one order to two order is 100% increase, but just saying it's 100% it's factually true, but it's all about how you approach it in terms of
right.
Whatever. And that's our responsibility as marketers is we have to do that, but you can only do it. You still have to have oversight into that.
Yeah, right.
They'll just run out of control and you'll get to an end result. Oh, it says to do this. And you're like, that's not what it should be.
You've always got to push back is what I've found is that you've always got to push back. You've got to test and learn. And anytime you're deploying new technology, accelerating as fast as it is today, it requires almost more oversight. It's just in a different way than what we're used to. And I think that transition is happening right now. And that's just going to continue to grow, over the next couple of years as we see the proliferation of AI in so many different areas. That's going to be probably one of the biggest challenges is getting people to focus on what they should versus being scared to adapt to it and understanding that it's not taking away your job, it's just making you more productive, right? Mm-hmm. And making sure that you jump on that bandwagon. So it's going to be an interesting couple of years for sure, I think, across the board.
Well said. Yes.
Cool. Well, Bart, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate you sharing your thoughts.
Thank you so much for the invitation, Marty. It was great to chat.